Hello, hello. Here's Agi coming to you again from Broadcast Team Alpha. And we're on 44 different platforms around the world. And if you are watching on one of them, like YouTube, and you like what you hear in this video, please subscribe and check the bell, because then you will know when the next video comes out. And chances are you will like that one too. So let's have some fun. Let's do a mind experiment. So, what's a mind experiment? How far does it extend into our reality? In order to understand what a mind experiment is, maybe we should look at the word. And my mom always told me decades ago that if there's a word you don't understand, read it backwards and you will understand it. So, mind experiments means experiment with the mind. Of course, that leads us to another question. What is the mind? Well, is it in here or is it in here? Or is it out there? Well, that's a tough one, because science says one thing, but they're now coming around to a different answer. What you have in your cranium is the brain, and what you have in your heart is another brain with about 40 to 60,000 neurons that has recently been discovered. Those two together, they work with the universal mind out there. So they become here, and here becomes the tool of the universal mind. If we can get all three of them to work together, we are immensely powerful. And that is one of the things that the establishment is trying to prevent you from discovering. Let's see if we can screw up their plan a little bit here in the next 20 minutes. Because someone said not long ago that we can only think about one thing at a time. And that is actually true for most people. They usually think about one thing at a time. But they can think about more than one thing at a time. It's just that they don't, because they never have been told that they could or how to do it. So let's do that. I think about, ever so often, I find myself thinking about two things at the same time, because I train my mind to do that. I don't think I have ever talked about this on a show, on an interview, or I don't think I even did that in any of my books. But here goes the first one. You can, and I'm going to show you how. And guess what? It's going to work for you the very first time you do it, because it's so simple. It's just that nobody ever taught you how. Are you excited yet? I am. So, once you accept that something is possible, it makes an imprint in the mind. An imprint of acceptance removes barriers. And yes, then you discover that, wait a minute, if it's possible, I can do it. If anybody else can do it, I can do it. Because we have the same facilities. It's just that we may not have been trained to do the same thing or laid down the neural network for it to implement it into the physical around us. So in a little bit, I'm going to get you to agree that you can think about two things at the same time. Can you imagine what you can get done if you can work on two different projects at the same time? This is one of the things that I got to teach people when 30 years ago, oh God, that's a long time. 30 years ago, I was traveling around the country teaching a mind development course. It's called ZOX Pro Training and ZOX Pro Training. And they're still doing it. And we taught, it was a phenomenal experience for me because we taught people how to assimilate information out of a book at the rate of 50,000 to 100,000 words per minute with 95% retention. And once in a while, when we had the right crowd in the class, we went into teaching how to think about two things at the same time, because that is a little controversial, because you're not supposed to be able to do it, but you can. So let me tell you a story. It relates to Nikola Tesla. While he was still in Colorado Springs, he was being interviewed by a newspaper at his laboratory, at his, Wild Cliff, where he had the tower. And into the interview, he just said, "Oh, please stop." And he sat there for a while, didn't say anything. Now, this was written up in the interview. And the interviewer, he says, "What's wrong?" or "What's going on?" And Nikola Tesla said, "Oh, I was running a mind experiment in my head." And he said, "And it failed. So I'm sorry, I have to break off the interview. I have to go back to my laboratory and check and see what went wrong." Let that sink in. He had a project going on in his mind while he was doing that interview with the newspaper. The project in his mind came to a conclusion when it failed. That was a mental project he was running on the basis of something physically that he was trying to create in his laboratory. So yes, he was thinking of two things at the same time. Even though what was going on in his mind, that mind experiment, he wasn't thinking about it. But the mind was working on it anyway. It worked through and came to a conclusion. Guess what? If he can do it, you can do it. Because we have the same brain. It is just that he trained his brain to do more things, more extravagance and more elaborate things than most people know they can train the mind and the brain to do. So then the question comes up, how can you do this? Let me show you. I'm going to try to make this video as short as possible because people, they love short videos. So this mind experiment that I'm going to have you do is, in the beginning, it's best done with your eyes closed, because then you exclude all outside stimuli or distractions. Except for if your dog barks with your eyes closed, you can still hear it, so try to avoid that. Now, do you agree that when you count from 1 to 100, you have to think in order to do that? Okay. I hope most of you agreed. Now, if you sit down and think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 100 or more, you have a string of memories showing up in your memory facility, which allows you to be conscious of the counting from 1 to 100. That's thinking. Now, when you sit down, close your eyes and start counting. Also, at the very same time as you keep counting, think about your mom. Create a mental image in front of you of your mom. You can actually do that. Now, when you create a mental image of something, is that thinking? Yes, it is. And when you do that, you can also move that image around and have it do things while you are still counting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to all the way to 100. So let's do the experiment. I have explained it so you know what to expect. Close your eyes. Start counting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not too fast and not too slow, just comfortable cadence. 3, 4, just keep counting. At the same time, try to bring up a mental image of your mom in front of you as you keep counting at the same time. There's your mom, and you're counting. Keep counting, and there's your mom, your mental image of your mom in front of you. You can see her in your mind. Keep counting. Keep counting. And see the mental image of your mom in front of you. That's good enough for starters. Now, you should have been able to keep counting and also have a mental image of your mom at the same time. So, this is the very base of you being able to think about two things at the same time. You were counting, that takes thought. You saw your mom, that takes another thought. But they are running parallel to each other. So in the beginning, when you start with it, you have proven the concept now. You have accepted it is possible. When you have accepted it is possible, then it opens up totally new possibilities within this concept. Here's where you start. Now you can practice and train the mind to do more elaborate things. And it doesn't take that much. You just gotta practice a little bit. And the best way to start this out, counting, is a good one. Because we are so used to it. And it is so simple to think of. That is a simple string of a long thought. At the same time, we develop a parallel line of thinking, and we are able to do both. And it doesn't take much of a practice. If you do this particular beginning exercise that we just did right now, do it every day or whenever you think about it. If you think about it a lot, you could end up doing it 10 times a day. And that is phenomenally good because now you're starting to condition the mind and lay down a neural network that will lead you to parallel thinking. As you get longer and more into this, you can start developing more elaborate visualization. In the beginning, try not to just stay with the mental images of things first, because running two conversations at the same time is more difficult than having one conversation, which is the thinking of numbers. At the same time, you have a mental image. That is simpler. So condition the mind with that first, because then when you get better at that, then you're ready for two conversations at the same time. That gets interesting because you can actually have two different people you're thinking about running two conversations at the same time. And what is really strange here is that if you do this for a while, you're going to find these two individuals you're running two different conversations with, they start conversing with each other. I've had that happen. Guess what happens then? That's the universal mind that is start getting in the game with you and take over the experiment. Your mind, your brain and your heart together stands back and let the universal mind run the conversation. So now when you accept this is possible, it removes all the barriers. You can develop this to any height that you want. And you can train your mind to do just about anything you want within this concept. You can read a book while you are thinking about how to develop something over here, parallel to what you're reading in the book. Okay. I know there's probably other things that I should say in this regard, but you can stay in touch and we can talk about it. I am perfectly open for communication with anybody that buys my books or is part of the mastermind that Nori and I put together. And I also watch Facebook and other places. So you have access to me. If you have questions, don't be bashful. Just ask. You remember? Ask and you be given, right? So again, if you like what you heard, please subscribe because there'll be more interesting things like this coming on Broadcast Team Alpha. And one last comment. Nori and I put together a spiritual think tank where we are putting a lot of the universal creative principles to work together with an education that we are doing that is, I would say, second to none. So if you want to know more about that and participate in it, send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. themastermindconnection@gmail.com. And maybe we'll see you there. So now you know you can think about two things at the same time. Develop it. Expand on it. Expand on it beyond what I'm able to do. Become good at it. It is just like in the old days when they fought with swords. Once in a while, you have somebody in the army that had two swords, and they were fighting two enemies at the same time. Those are the ones that everybody was scared of because they knew they could not win. Same here. When you can develop your mind to this level of doing this good, you win. So thank you for watching. And one more last thing I want to say, and that is that be good to each other.